My friend expected me to let her live rent-free indefinitely, arguing, "I'd do it for you." When I asked for a contribution, she called me greedy and left overnight, trashing the place. I found her online post about toxic friends and replied, "You're right. I deserve better." I had been living comfortably in my two-bedroom apartment in Chicago for several years. It was my sanctuary, a place where I could unwind after long days at work. The neighborhood was friendly, with local shops and cafes that I frequented. Life was steady, and I was content. Then came a call from my old college friend, Sarah. We had shared countless memories during our university days, late-night study sessions, spontaneous road trips, and endless conversations about our dreams and fears. After graduation, we drifted apart, as life often dictates, but the bond remained. "Hey, it's been a while," Sarah's voice crackled over the phone. There was a tremor in her tone, something I hadn't heard before. "Sarah." "Wow, yeah, it's been ages. How have you been?" I responded, genuinely pleased to hear from her. There was a pause. "Not great, to be honest. I lost my job a few months ago. Things have spiraled since then. I'm struggling to make rent, and I might get evicted soon." Hearing this, my heart ached for her. Memories of our friendship flooded back, and I felt an overwhelming urge to help. "That's awful, Sarah. Is there anything I can do?" I offered, already contemplating solutions. Actually, she hesitated. "I was wondering if I could stay with you for a bit? Just until I get back on my feet." "I promise it won't be long." The thought of sharing my space after years of solitude gave me pause, but this was Sarah, my friend who had been there during some of my darkest times. "Of course," I said without much thought. "Come over whenever you're ready." The following day, Sarah arrived with 2 large suitcases and a weary smile. I helped her settle into the guest room, which I had hastily cleaned out the night before. That evening, we reminisced about our college days, laughing over shared memories and inside jokes. It felt like old times, and I was hopeful that our cohabitation would be harmonious. In the initial weeks, Sarah seemed proactive. She would wake up early, make coffee for both of us, and spend hours on her laptop, presumably job hunting. We established a routine, cooking meals together, watching movies, and even exploring the city on weekends. It felt good to reconnect. However, as weeks turned into a month, subtle changes began to emerge. I noticed Sarah spending more time binge-watching shows and less time on her laptop. Dishes started piling up in the sink, and laundry was left unattended. I tried to be patient, attributing it to the stress she was under. One evening, as we sat on the couch, I broached the subject delicately. "Hey, Sarah, have you had any luck with the job applications?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She sighed, not meeting my gaze. "I've applied to a few places, but no callbacks yet. It's tough out there." "I understand," I replied empathetically. "Maybe we could revamp your resume or look into different industries?" She nodded half-heartedly, and the conversation drifted to other topics. Another month passed, and the situation remained unchanged. The initial camaraderie began to wane as resentment subtly crept in. I found myself cleaning up after her more often, and the financial strain of supporting 2 people started to take its toll. One morning, as I was preparing to pay the monthly bills, I realized that my savings were depleting faster than anticipated. I decided it was time for a more direct conversation. "Sarah," I began as we sat down for dinner, "I've been thinking. Since it's been a couple of months, perhaps we could discuss splitting some of the expenses? Even a small contribution would help." She looked up, surprised. "I thought you understood my situation. I don't have any income right now." "I do understand," I said gently. "But things are getting tight for me as well. Maybe we can figure out a minimal amount that works for both of us." Her expression hardened. "I can't believe you're asking me for money when you know I'm struggling. I would never do this to you." Taken aback, I replied, "I'm not trying to pressure you, but I need to consider my own well-being too." The conversation ended abruptly, with Sarah retreating to the guest room and closing the door firmly behind her. The next morning, I woke up to an eerily quiet apartment. Sarah's belongings were gone, and the guest room was left in disarray. Trash littered the floor, and a few of my personal items were broken. I felt a mix of relief and betrayal. Later that day, as I scrolled through social media, I stumbled upon a post from Sarah. She had written a lengthy diatribe about toxic friends who turn their backs when times get tough. The comments were filled with sympathetic messages from her acquaintances. Anger bubbled within me. I had opened my home and heart to her, only to be painted as the villain. I decided to respond. "You're right. I deserve better." The aftermath was tumultuous. Mutual friends reached out, some siding with her, others with me. The experience taught me a valuable lesson about boundaries and the complexities of friendship. While it's essential to support those we care about, it's equally crucial to ensure that generosity isn't taken for granted. The fallout from Sarah's online post lasted longer than I thought it would. A few of our old friends messaged me directly, asking what happened. Some were genuinely curious. Others clearly believed her version. I didn't bother defending myself at first. What was the point? People believe what they want to believe. A week passed. I focused on cleaning up the apartment, fixing what she broke, and trying to get back to normal. But normal had taken a hit. Her presence had stirred something, maybe guilt, or just a deep feeling of being used. Then, one morning, I got an email from my landlord. Subject: noise complaint and property damage. The email detailed a report about a disturbance a neighbor had filed during the night Sarah left. Apparently, she had been screaming outside the building, cursing, and throwing bags into the back of a rideshare car. Another neighbor reported that someone matching her description broke a light in the hallway. I was mortified. The landlord asked for an explanation and told me I might be held responsible for damages if they confirmed the hallway light was broken by a guest from my apartment. I replied immediately, explaining the situation and offering to pay for any necessary repairs just to keep the peace. 2 days later, I found out something that changed everything. A coworker, someone I wasn't particularly close to, pulled me aside after a staff meeting. "I didn't want to make things awkward," she began, "but I saw something online I think you should know about." She showed me a local community Facebook group post. It was from Sarah. She had written another long vent, this time going into detail about our falling out. But she added something new, a claim that I had pressured her emotionally and that my weird behavior made her feel unsafe. Unsafe? She didn't name me directly, but everything she wrote made it obvious to anyone who knew us. The timeline, the references to our past, the location, people could easily piece it together. And they did. Over the next few days, I noticed more tension in my workplace. Colleagues who used to chat with me seemed distant. One even stopped replying to my messages entirely. I wasn't sure if they had seen the post or just sensed something was off, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I drafted my own post. Not angry, not defensive. Just the truth. I didn't go into too many details. I simply wrote, "Yes, someone stayed with me for a while. Yes, I asked them to help with bills after 3 months. No, I didn't kick them out. They left. They trashed my place and went online to smear me. If you know me, you know who I am." That's all I'll say. The response was split. Some people messaged me privately to show support. A few of Sarah's defenders commented with passive-aggressive remarks. One accused me of gaslighting her, though they clearly didn't know the meaning of the word. A few days later, I got another surprise. My work's HR department emailed me. Someone had anonymously submitted a complaint about me. The complaint accused me of creating an unsafe environment outside of work and being emotionally manipulative in my personal life. I was stunned. My hands were shaking as I read it. HR scheduled a meeting to discuss concerns. That meeting was one of the most humiliating moments of my life. I sat across from my manager and the HR rep, both of whom looked uncomfortable. I explained the entire situation, how Sarah had been my friend, how I helped her, how she left, how she'd twisted the story online. They nodded politely, but I could tell they were walking a fine line. I wasn't being fired. Not yet. But there was now a record of a concern. I was told to be mindful of how personal issues can bleed into professional spaces. I went home numb. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I just kept reading and rereading the complaint. Every word felt like a stab. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, someone tagged me in a post on a different forum, an anonymous gossip board for local drama. Someone had written a thread about beware toxic friends who pretend to be supportive. The story matched mine. Again, no names, but all the breadcrumbs were there. It had over 100 comments. People were sharing it, believing it. It was clear now. Sarah wasn't just bitter, she wanted revenge. And she was winning the sympathy game. But then something happened. A former roommate of hers, someone I had only met once at a party, messaged me. I hadn't spoken to her in years. Hey, I just saw what's going on online. You're not the first. She told me she had gone through something similar with Sarah 5 years ago. Sarah moved in, stayed too long, stopped contributing, and then left in a storm of drama and accusations when things got uncomfortable. Her ex-roommate had tried to warn others, but people brushed her off. That message gave me the first bit of clarity I'd had in weeks. This wasn't about me. This was a pattern. And if it was a pattern, maybe I wasn't as alone as I felt. So I started digging. Carefully. Quietly. And that's when things really started to unravel. I started by going through my old photos, texts, and emails. Anything that might help me make sense of what was happening. I wasn't planning to post them publicly. I just needed something solid to remind myself that I wasn't crazy. While scrolling through old messages, I found something odd. A screenshot Sarah had sent me months ago during her first week staying with me. At the time, I didn't think much of it. It was a text from someone named Jenna that read, "Girl, you're nuts for doing that. If he says anything, flip it on him like last time." It clicked. I had assumed he was an ex or some guy she was talking to. But now, with everything going on, I read it differently. Like maybe she had planned this. Like maybe this wasn't just bad luck or a falling out. The ex-roommate who messaged me, her name was Alyssa, agreed to chat on a video call. She looked tired, worn down, but relieved someone was finally talking about it. She did the same to me, she said. Even used the same phrases. "I'd do it for you," and when I pushed back, suddenly I was controlling and unstable. She made me feel insane. Alyssa told me Sarah had moved in with 3 different people over the last few years, each time following the same script. She'd charm them, live off them, leave on bad terms, and spin the story to her benefit. Always vague enough not to get sued, but detailed enough to ruin reputations. "She's smart," Alyssa said. "She knows how to manipulate sympathy. And once she turns on you, it's like fighting smoke." This was a whole new level. I wasn't just dealing with a bad friend. I was up against someone who had done this before and knew exactly how to make it look like I was the villain. Then I got a letter in the mail. It was from a lawyer. Apparently, Sarah was considering legal options for emotional distress and had retained representation. The letter didn't accuse me of anything specific. It was full of vague, threatening language about emotional damages, psychological manipulation, and harm to reputation. At the bottom was a request that I cease all mention of her online and remove any posts that could be construed as defamatory. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I called a lawyer of my own. He was blunt. "She probably won't sue, but she's trying to scare you. Still, don't post anything else. Don't reply to anything she writes online. And document everything." So I did. Emails, texts, old photos. Copies of the damaged items in my apartment. Screenshots of her posts. Witness accounts from friends and neighbors. And, most importantly, Alyssa's statement. I stayed quiet for a while after that. Just watched. And that's when something truly unexpected happened. One of Sarah's recent online friends, a girl named Becca, sent me a message on Instagram. It was short. Just one sentence. "Hey, do you know what happened between Sarah and that guy in Denver?" I stared at the message for a while, then responded, "No, why?" She replied with a screenshot. It was a post from another local forum, Denver-based, about a woman who had moved in with a guy, refused to pay anything, left abruptly, and started accusing him of emotional abuse. The wording? almost identical to what she said about me. I reached out to the guy from the post. His name was Mark. At first, he didn't respond. But after a few days, he agreed to talk. Yeah, that's her, he confirmed. She changed her hair and used a fake last name, but it's the same person. Same playbook. She had done this again in a completely different city under a different name. He had tried to take her to small claims court for property damage, but she disappeared before the court date. No forwarding address, no contact. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just bad behavior anymore. This was deliberate. A pattern. A scam. But one that walked a fine line just shy of legal consequences, just enough deniability. And I had been her latest mark. I was stunned. Furious. And still stuck dealing with fallout in my real life. The HR record, the broken friendships, the stress, the threats. She'd walked away clean. Again. But now I had people. Alyssa. Mark. Even Becca, who now felt betrayed herself. And one more thing fell into my lap. A podcast. Someone had submitted a tip to a podcast that covered local con artists and scammers. They were small, niche, maybe a few thousand listeners, but legit. I didn't know who tipped them off. Maybe Alyssa. Maybe Becca. But they reached out to me for an interview. I said yes. I didn't name Sarah, per legal advice. But I told the story. Honestly. Calmly. Everything that happened. They disguised my voice and changed a few details. But people listening, especially people who knew the real story, would get it. The episode dropped 3 weeks later. That's when the real chaos started. The podcast blew up faster than anyone expected. Within days, clips of it started circulating on TikTok and Reddit. People were guessing who the story was about. Some called it fake. Others said it sounded exactly like this girl I used to know. Then someone found one of Sarah's public profiles where she'd posted vague quotes about being betrayed. A few internet detectives connected the dots. And then came the DM from a woman named Carla. She had been Sarah's roommate in a small city in Oregon 2 years before me. Carla said she had stayed quiet out of fear. Sarah had threatened to accuse her of abuse if she said anything. But when she heard the podcast, she couldn't ignore it. She sent me everything. Photos, texts, screenshots of Sarah admitting in messages that she faked panic attacks to avoid paying rent. Carla even had a recording of Sarah yelling that she'd ruin her reputation online if she ever made her pay. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. That's when my lawyer's tone changed. We can build a case, he said. This isn't just a misunderstanding or a falling out. This is targeted behavior, potentially even fraud. Still, I hesitated. Legal cases are long, expensive, exhausting. But something in me had snapped. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person Sarah had hurt. Every life she'd disrupted. I filed. Small claims first for the property damage, the emotional distress, and the legal threats. Mark and Alyssa filed too. We coordinated through a group chat that Becca helped set up. By now, there were 7 of us. All had lived with Sarah. All had been burned. We called ourselves the cleanup crew. Sarah didn't respond to the court summons at first. Maybe she thought it was another empty threat. But when she was served in person on the street outside her new job, she went quiet online. No more vague posts. No more rants about toxic friends. Just silence. The court date came. She showed up looking different, clean-cut, calm, professional. But her eyes didn't match the rest of her. She scanned the room and froze when she saw me sitting next to Mark and Alyssa. The judge listened to each of us. I showed the photos of the damaged apartment. The repair bills. Alyssa showed her broken lease agreement and the texts threatening to ruin her job. Mark showed the police report from Denver and proof she vanished right before the court date. Carla submitted her evidence by mail. Becca testified about what Sarah had told her in private. Sarah didn't say much. She tried to cry. She said we were all ganging up on her, that this was a witch hunt, and that she had mental health issues. The judge asked if she had documentation for any of it. She didn't. The judge ruled in our favor. She was ordered to pay us a combined total that exceeded 10 grand. Not life-changing money, but enough to hurt someone who never thought she'd face consequences. But here's where it really ends. A few weeks after the ruling, I got another email from a podcast producer. Not the original one, a bigger show. They had heard the story and wanted to do a full documentary. Interviews, reenactments, everything. They said it could air on streaming platforms if it went well. At first, I didn't know what to say. I was tired, worn out. But I remembered how Sarah's lies had almost cost me my job. How I doubted myself. How people looked at me like I was dangerous, like I was the problem. So I said yes. The documentary aired 6 months later. They didn't use her real name, but anyone who knew her recognized the story. More people came forward after that. A guy from Texas. A woman from Michigan. Another girl from a college dorm nearly a decade ago. All with the same story. Same pattern. Sarah vanished off the internet after that. Deleted her profiles. Quit her job. No one knows where she went. As for me, I still live in the same apartment. It's quiet again. Peaceful. But I lock the guest room door now. Because the truth is, I made mistakes too. I let someone walk all over me because I thought being kind meant being silent. I ignored red flags because I wanted to believe the best in someone. I gave too much without asking for anything back. But I'm not that person anymore. And if she ever tries this again, anywhere, with anyone, there's a paper trail now. A story she can't rewrite. A truth she can't delete. And a whole crew of people ready to warn the next one. She thought she'd never be held accountable. She was wrong.